So my first guest on this pilot episode, and I'm so happy that Phil is my first guest, but my first guest is Phil Cooper. Phil Cooper is the president and CEO of 210 Financial out of Morton, Illinois. And Phil, thank you so much for being the first guest on this pilot episode.
Well, first of all, you're welcome. But really, most importantly, Justin, what an honor to be your first guest. Thank you so much for that privilege. I appreciate that more than you can imagine.
Yeah, you probably don't even realize how much you've kind of influenced even this whole podcast and the idea for it. So I thought it only fitting to do that. So
It's my honor.
can
Thank you.
can we start off? Just tell us a little bit about who you are. How did you get started in the business? Like, what's your founder story?
Yeah, wow. It's a little bit of a lengthy story, but it's worth telling. I think there's a tremendous amount of what I call God moments in there. I don't believe in circumstances. I believe in God incidences. And so 25 years ago, I was in a completely different industry and I was traveling a lot and I was gone from my family a lot. And I just was, I guess, miserable. I was looking for another opportunity. I was in a very good career, a very, very good career. I had, I think, a good future in front of me, but I was not doing the things that were aligning with who I am as a person. First of all, as a believer in the Lord, and second of all, as a husband, and third of all, maybe as a father. I was watching my young daughters at the time grow up in pictures, and I just was kind of done with that, and I was tired of it. And a friend of mine kept on me to come to this weekend men's retreat, and kind of a Christian retreat. And I kept saying to him, "Thank you for the invitation, but I'm going to be honest with you. If I'm going to spend a weekend someplace, I don't want to spend it with you. I'd rather spend it with my wife and daughters." And he would not relent. He would not relent. And I gave in and I went with him one weekend. And it was a Friday night and a Saturday event. And on Friday night, one of the gentlemen got up on stage, and this was an auditorium of maybe 15,000 people, huge auditorium full of men. And I remember this pastor standing up there saying, "When is the last time something was so heavy on your heart that it caused you to have to stay up all night long, forsaking sleep, because you just needed an answer from God?" And it was like somebody who was speaking my language. And I literally stayed up all night that night, asking God for something in my life that would take me down a different path. The next morning was obviously Saturday morning. I went back to the event and I slept through the entire event. I was up all night praying. I had slept the entire event. I didn't get anything out of Saturday, but I knew one thing. I was coming home to do one thing. It was so clear to me, Justin. I came home and walked in the door. My wife said, "Welcome home. How was your weekend?" And I said, "It was great. I'm going in Monday morning to put in my 2-week notice." Now, this is the type of spouse that I have. She says to me, "If you think that's the best thing for our family, then I support you." To which I said, "Please don't support me on this. Please push back, because I might be doing something pretty bad here." She said, "No, if that's what God wants from you, then that's what I want from you." And I left and had nowhere to go and nothing to do. Well, many, many months had gone by after that. And I was at church one Sunday morning, and a gentleman walked up to me and said, "I heard you're no longer doing your career. What are you going to do next?" And I said, "I really have no idea." He said, "Stop in Monday in my office and let's talk." And I went in and sat down and talked to him. And he said, "Would you ever consider doing what I do?" And I said, I really don't know what you do." He said, "I have a financial planning business and I'd be happy to teach you the ropes." Well, that was 25 years ago. And because of that moment in time, that I was hopefully and thankfully obedient to God, to that man then being obedient to reaching out to me 25 years later, that guy and I are still best friends. He still has a thriving practice, and I have a very much a thriving practice, and here I am today. And we believe this is our calling. We call ourselves missionaries to the land of money. People think they're coming in to talk about financial planning when they walk out and they've been prayed for, and we've seen marriages reconciled. We've seen people come to the Lord for the first time. We've seen prodigal children come home right at our conference room table. So I tell my staff that our pulpit is our conference room tables. We're there to serve people in a Christ-like manner, and that's what we do every day of the week.
I love it. So how old were you at the time when you, so 25 years ago, and how old was your family? Was it a pretty young family, or?
Yeah, girls were real young. I would have been in my 25. I'd have been in my early 30s. My daughters would have been 8, 9, 10 years old. that age, maybe not even, maybe 5 to 10 years old, something like that. Since then, I have a son who we were talking about prior to the show here. He's 16 now. He was not in the picture at that point, but my girls would have been 5 to 8, 5 to 10 years old in that range. And now my daughter, the oldest one, is now the co-CEO of my firm. So you talk about a joy watching that full transition go from her seeing her dad not home and involved in her life to her working with me every day of the week as my co-CEO.
Is she old enough to remember back then what it was like for you to be constantly gone and what it's like now? And does she
Absolutely.
appreciate that? I'm
Absolutely.
sure.
She appreciates, yes, absolutely. She appreciates it so much so that she has made sure that she has modeled the second generation of her father more than she did the first generation, because now she has two young boys who are 5 and 2, and she's making sure that this occupation is important. It's very important. This is our ministry. This is our calling. This is our livelihood. But it takes a second. It takes second seat to raising children and doing the things she needs to do within her family. So yeah, she remembers it very well, and I think it's made her into who she is today.
I love it. What's it like having a supportive wife like that where she's like, Phil, if that's what you think you should do?
It's scary and it's honoring at the same time. The scary part is I better make sure that I'm hearing the Lord very clearly, because my wife will do whatever I ask of her to do. She thinks that, humbly, I say this to you, Justin, she thinks that whatever I think is, if I think that's the way we need to go, then she says, then that must be the way we need to go. She trusts me at that level. And that is a scary thing, because I need to make sure that what I'm doing is right for myself and for her and for our kids and for our grandkids, for our employees, for our clients, for a lot of people now. So I got to make sure that I'm on my knees before God, hearing him clearly, because I know what my wife is going to say. She's going to say, if that's what you think is right, then we're going to do that. So it's caused me to be a more attentive prayer. It's caused me to be a more attentive believer, a more attentive friend. If a guy like you would reach out to me and say, hey, I see this going on, maybe you ought to consider going another direction. I listen very closely to that now, because behind the scenes, I have a wife who will just say, let's do it. That's what you want, Lynn. Let's go.
I love it. I love it. So you started off. Did you start off in an office right away, or were you working out of your home, and then did you get an office? How was what did the beginning look like for you when you had to grind and
Yeah, that's
really
a good
knock
question.
things
So
out?
I went to work with this gentleman I mentioned to you, but he was not in my employer in any way. I was coming in, I was being paid off of straight commission. Well, I didn't have any clients. And so you can imagine the early years were very, very lean. And he was teaching me the process of being a financial planner and what that means, and building complete financial plans for people, and not just being a salesperson. So I was in his office with him, but that was his office. And then over time, as I developed my set of skills, him and I ultimately did become partners, and a wonderful partnership. And today we're no longer partners, but he's still one of my best friends. We still travel together. We still vacation together. His office is not far from here, and he has a wonderful practice, and so do we. And so I was in his office. He was teaching me, and he was so gracious. He was doing all of the marketing. We were doing seminars and things that were pretty standard, but he was fronting the check for that. He was paying for those things, and I was paying him back as the commissions would come in.
Okay.
And so I started that way, and then grew that into a much different type of scenario when we became partners, and then brought on employees of our own. But the early days were quite lean, several years of very, very lean, wondering every time, are we going to make it? Wondering every time, how are we going to get the next sale, the next client? How are we going to do this? When the money would always seem to run out before the next client would walk through the door. So those were some difficult times, but I will tell you, when you go through those difficult times and you come out the other side of those, you realize you have a different set of skills than had you not gone through those difficult times. I'll tell you, it makes you a lot more resourceful, makes you a lot more faith driven, makes you a lot more frugal, and a lot more compassionate for those who you're sitting across the desk from, because they're going through difficult times too. And you walk through those, it makes you into a different a servant of those people sitting across from you.
I love that. So Phil, I just started my 13th year in the financial services industry as a marketing professional, and I've known
Congratulations.
you. Thank you. I've known you that entire time.
Yeah.
I feel like, and we were we kept in touch a little bit, but even more recently. But you changed the company name to 210 Financial recently.
Yeah,
Is there a story behind that or a significance
yeah,
behind 210
yeah, there
Financial?
sure is. So when I was growing up, Justin, I had a very, very tumultuous, difficult childhood, as many people do. I don't want to glorify my story over anyone else's. I realize there's a lot of people who have difficult lives, even today, not just their growing up years, but my growing up years were were very, very tumultuous. There was a revolving door of quote unquote fathers in my life. We grew up in small town central Illinois. Everyone knows everyone else, and one of my stepfathers was involved in a murder as he was married to my mom. So that's on the front page of the newspaper. There was police officers in and out of our house all the time for drugs and alcohol and abuse, and that was my life. And I never had a home, so to speak. By the time I moved out of my parents' homes and got onto my own, I had lived in 22 houses. And that was always when the rent was due, we were being pushed out of the house because they weren't paying the rent.
Okay.
So the money for rent was going to other things, as you can imagine.
Sure.
And so living in those 22 houses in the first 18 years of my life, when I married my wife, I made a pledge to her that we would have one home. We would raise our kids in that home. We would do life in that home. We would eventually pass away in that home. And our kids would always, always have a place to come back to call home, no matter where they were at in the world. We wanted that stability. We wanted to break that chain of what my life was like. And we bought one home, and that home is the address of that home is 210 such and
Wow.
such street. And so when our children would come home from a bad day of school, maybe they had their first breakup of a boyfriend, they got a bad grade, a sporting event didn't go the way they wanted, they'd come into the house and they'd be upset. But we'd always tell them, when you walk into this house and that door closes behind you, you're now at 210. This is the place where mom and dad are. This is where your family is. This is where love resides. This is where safety is had. And so that number 210 took on a life of its own. So today, even today, my kids are now grown and going on and doing life and having kids of their own. If they have a bad day, you see one of our family members lean into the other one, we'll whisper in their ear, 210. That just means I'm right here. I've got your back. You're okay. Mom and dad are right here with you. Your siblings are here with you. Family's here. Love is here. God is here. And so that number 210 brought on a life. It seriously took on a life of its own. Justin, we'll literally see that number everywhere. I'll give you a quick funny story. There are 210 calories in a Reese's peanut butter cup. We know that. There are 210 calories in a snack bag size of Cheez-Its. We see that number everywhere. And so a few years ago, we realized if that's who we are as people, then we want to portray that more effectively to our clients. We want them to know when they walk in the doors here at our office, safety is here, family is here. Scare, fear, worry needs to be out there. We're now in a place where we've wrapped our arms around our clients, and we want them to have that 210 love too. So we named the company 210 Financial. We felt like that had everything to do with who we are as people.
What was it like rebranding that? Was it kind of a nightmare a little bit at first?
No, not a nightmare in any way, but it was difficult because for the first 20 years, we were another name of the name of the company is a totally different name. It was just, you birth a company, it literally is like a child to you. And to undo even the name of it was hard, the rebranding, those kind of things. But clients adopted it when we told that story that I just told to you. They jumped in and said, we want to be part of that. We want that for our life too. And so what we started doing then is when someone would become a client, we'd find out their address. Maybe their address was 128 North Main Street. We then would get a plaque for them. And it would say, live your best live your best 128 life. Justin lives at 716 Woodbury Street. Justin, go live your best 716 life. And people would then report back to us. And they'd say, we hung that on our door. And people say, what does that mean? And we get to tell them, here's our legacy. Our legacy is we raised kids in this home and we're doing life in this home. And now our grandkids are in this home. We have a 128 life. We have a 716 life. And so they've adopted that number, their own number, as something that they're carrying on now into their life and driving that heritage and driving that legacy. So the 210 is brought on a life of its own. But clients will call us, they'll email us, they'll be on vacation, they'll get stuck in a 210 room at the hotel, and they'll call us. You aren't going to believe what room we're in. This is awesome. And then so that's it's brought on a life of its own. And was it hard? Was it a nightmare? No, it was a difficult undoing because I was used to something else. But when we told the story of who we are as people and then helped our clients develop who they are as people, that number and that name of that company became really, really something easy to communicate.
Yeah, the only reason I ask is because I talk to a lot of advisors throughout the day and throughout the week, and this doesn't happen all the time, but there's been a few times over the years where an advisor didn't have a choice, didn't have a they didn't have a choice as to their company name changing. So two advisors were partners and they split up, and one of them kept all the branding and everything. And it was just, for them, it was a horrible thing that they had to kind of restart from the beginning. But it sounds like you voluntarily, purposely rebranded, and
We
you
did, yeah.
actually leveraged it into even some marketing and branding opportunities where you were telling them, live your best 175 life or whatever.
That's exactly right. We chose to make it into something that was more of a springboard for us and for the client, more so than something that was to be treacherous or difficult or setback. No, we wanted to take this as a springboard into the next chapter for everyone involved.
Have you ever read the book Start with Why by Simon Sinek?
I sure have.
Yeah. So for the listeners who haven't read it, it's a great book. If you ever want a 15-minute synopsis of it, just type in Start with Why Simon Sinek TED Talk, and there's a great TED Talk with that on there. But in that book, he talks about a lot of people, and if we were to personalize it for financial advisors, a lot of financial advisors know what they do. They help people retire. They help people navigate their finances. Some advisors even know how they do it. So I saw on your website that you have a retirement blueprint financial review. So that's how you help people retire. But not a lot of advisors know or are in touch with or even have considered why they do what they do. And so I was looking at your website, and on your bio, at the end of your bio, it says your favorite part about working at 210 Financial is being able to build a legacy with my children, watching our clients become more like family. I love being able to build out a plan that gives them confidence. It's very rewarding. Would you say that's what your why is?
I would say that's part of my why, Justin. We call it DLT. It's doing life together with our employees and with our clients. Now, well, let me tell you what that means. A few years ago, I maybe was going through what I might label as, I think the world and let's just go down that road. I think the world would label it as burnout. I was just running hard. And it was meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And we were having wonderful record breaking years, year in and year out. But for some reason, my happiness and my joy seemed to be waning during that process. And here I was achieving all that our industry was wanting me to achieve, and all the things, quite honestly, I wanted to achieve in this industry. But my joy had left, my happiness had left. And so I realized that I was doing this for the why of other things, not for Phil's why. And we started to look into this and pray through this and talk through this as a family. And we developed that DLT because what turns my emotional side to want to wake up every morning and get in this office and excited about being in this office, not the grind anymore, but what would drive me to want to be here every day. That was my why that I was missing. It did not come out of that book, but that book will tell you how to do that. But my why was, what turns me on is to do life together with that person sitting across the desk from me, helping them understand how they can proceed into their dreams and into their goals and carry their legacy forward. That drives me. And what was not driving me anymore was the money. Although it's necessary. It's absolutely necessary. Profit is essential for any successful business. We have to have it. Sales are necessary. Marketing is necessary. Processes and systems, they're necessary. Don't let me diminish that in this conversation, but what I want to make sure is preeminent in all of this is why we're getting out of bed every morning and doing it. When I had that perspective shift, that I could sit across a desk and I could take that person from wherever they were and move them down the road a little further toward their goals, their dreams. That's my ministry, and pray with them in my conference room and minister to them in such a way. Now clients are reaching back out saying, when I'm dead, would you preach my funeral? When my daughter gets married, would you officiate the service? And I'm thinking, okay, something changed. It went from this client needs an annuity to this client wants me to marry their daughter off. Something changed there. And they not only heard me differently, they felt those meetings differently. And that's my why. So whoever's listening to this today, I would say to you, what is your why? Because it will absolutely catapult, it will absolutely skyrocket the growth of your business into scalability if you can have that why and teach that why throughout your entire organization. There's a dozen people that work in this office every day. We have 3 offices, 3 locations. There's a dozen people amongst those 3 locations. They know their DLT. They know their why. They know why they're showing up here every day. And it's not about the money, although we pay them. Of course, they have to have a paycheck, but that's not why they're here. They are here to make an impact in that person's life and drive that client to the next level of dreams and goals. And even it might just be to pray with that person. Something has to drive you. So I say it's a very long answer, but that answer is once my why was discovered, not only did the business take off, Phil showed up every day with joy in his heart, smile on his face, couldn't wait to be here, because that's once you have your why figured out, now you realize this is what I am called to do. This is why I was designed to be on earth. That's a pretty powerful thing to discover.
Yeah. And I love how you made the distinction that it's not about profit, although you absolutely need profit. You can't run a business if you're not making profit, but that's not your why. That's a result.
That's right. That's correct. That's exactly right. It's a byproduct of doing everything else that you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories that I've heard you tell, Phil, it was in 2020. And I feel like this perfectly illustrates your why. Because in 2020, in the beginning of the year, the country shut down and life, marketing, financial advisor life as we knew it ceased to exist, or as a lot of people knew it. And so when I was having conversations daily with advisors who were struggling to get in front of their next client because they were so used to the lead generation, like dinner seminars and radio, where radio is shutting down or whatever, you were having your best year or maybe even your best month ever. And so we had a conversation that I was part of where you said and I don't want to put the words in your mouth, so I'm going to shut up in a second, but you were asking 3 questions to your clients, and I think this perfectly illustrates your why. So do you mind sharing that just for the listeners?
Yeah, of course. So there was, if we could all go back to March of 2020, that was a time when, boy, that was just a time we didn't know what was going on in our world, did we? We were waking up to a different world than we grew up in. There's only been a couple of times in my life that I can remember having those moments that were so poignant that they caused a fundamental change to everything we did. For example, 9/11 in September of 2001, when those airplanes hit those towers in New York City, it changed. We didn't know what the next day was going to bring. Was the world truly ending? What was actually going on? And a lot of confusion, a lot of things like that. So March of 20, COVID happens. The world literally shuts down, literally. Everybody goes home. Now we're working from our living rooms and we're working from our basements and those kind of things. And we didn't know, was quote unquote normal going to return back to our life? So we gathered here as a firm and we decided we were going to do things differently. We were not going to go down that road of what everyone else is going to do. We were going to hit the gas pedal. And we were going to make an impact in people's lives and find out, because there's a lot of fear. Man, oh man, was there a lot of fear in clients and even in our employees. So the first thing I did is I gathered the employees and I said, listen, We're a well-funded company. You have a job here. Let's put that aside. No one's losing their job. We're here. We're in this thing together. We're just going to figure it out differently. Next thing you do is we went to our clients and said, we are here. We're here. We're going to be here. We're going to do this thing. We're going to be here for you, with you, but we're going to be in this thing to walk with you, not stand on the sideline and cheer for you. We're going to lock arms with you, and we're going to walk with you through this thing, because we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring either. So at every client, we prior to that day or prior to that year, we didn't know what a Zoom was, and now this is what we're doing, right? Zoom became a thing, and
Yes.
we've lost human interaction during that time. And so what we started to do is to make sure we kept human interaction in the process. We made sure people saw our faces, heard our voices, saw our face inflections and our dramatic impressions of things. They wanted to make sure there's a person sitting behind more than just a phone call or something. And here's what took place during that time, Justin. By keeping the human element in there and reaching out and touching people in a way that they needed to be touched at that point in time and bringing some form of stability to them, our business doubled in 1 year. Let me tell you what I mean, how that happened. Make up a name and say, Bob and Mary Smith were long-term clients, and they would call us and say, thank you so much for this, Phil, for letting us know you're there, letting us know that we're okay, letting us know we're going to make it through this thing. Number two, by the way, our daughter lives in California and just lost a job due to COVID. Could you reach out to her? And all of a sudden, our business went to California, and our business went to Texas, and our business went to Florida, and our business doubled to the 50 states of America. And now we have business all over the place because of a so-called calamity that was shutting the world down. Our clients said, these people are there with us. They're not standing on the sideline cheering for us. They're in the game with us. And we became what I call referable. And all of a sudden, our business absolutely exploded. So the first thing we did was we kept human element in the picture, and we brought it into the picture. Number two is we had to make sure that we were doing things behind the scenes that were going to impact people's lives. What was important to that client at that time? Was it going to be that we just said everything's going to be okay, or we were showing them things were going to be okay? And in this thing on a daily basis, communication. I told my team every day, that person on the other end of the phone is scared to death. The person on the other end of that Zoom meeting is scared to death. We're going to make sure we're going to be in this thing for as long as this meeting takes, until they can breathe a sigh of relief. And through that process, I say all of that to say that human element has been lost in our world, and it really got lost in March of 2020. And so we started asking those types of questions, doing those types of things, and building out human element systems around this thing, and our business doubled in 1 year.
I just remember sitting there listening to you tell that, and when we were in the conversation, you were asking, how are you? How can I help? Would you like a complimentary review of your portfolio? And then the way you told it, I just loved that story, and that really does encapsulate your why. And so thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I saw on your website that you guys are doing webinars, and so I want to shift a little bit to some marketing talk. Are webinars dead post-COVID? Have you found that, or do you feel like they're very much still alive?
Well, very much still alive. Everything that we used to do is still alive. We just layered on other things on top of that. So what we have found, I'm not sure it's going to be true in everyone's market, but certainly true in my markets, that it takes more touches to move someone forward now than it used to. Back in the day, I don't know how long ago, you could send out a 5,000 piece, 10,000 piece, 15,000 piece mailer. You could fill an entire dinner seminar on a lot less than you can do it today. Today, you can send out a 10,000 piece mailer, and you're going to get a very small response to that. But then, in order to move that person forward, we have developed these funnels around more than just one touch. So now the dinner seminar happens, or the television commercial happens, or the billboard happens, or the individual touches of that person. We've got systems built around that too, where we're touching these people multiple times. They're seeing me everywhere. They're seeing our company everywhere. And by the time that dinner seminar invitation actually shows up in their mail, they're like, I've seen them on TV. I've heard them on the radio. I see them in email. I see them on billboards. Maybe I've said that already. But, and all of a sudden, this guy shows up inviting them to someplace. Now our numbers have taken off again. So the marketing, You ask a short question, are webinars dead? Absolutely not. They're just part of a bigger picture than what they used to be. They used to be, well, let's switch from this to this. Let's now do webinars. No, let's do it all. Let's do it all still. I tell my marketing people, I've got a marketing team here. I tell them we are not a financial services company, period. We are a marketing company that happens to do financial services. You've got to be the best marketing in town. You've got to be the number one brand in town. You've got to be the number one voice in town. People think financial services, they've got to think 210 Financial. They can't think, well, you got this one and this one. No, there's no other choices. So you've got to be the best marketing team, best branding team who happens to do financial services as a way to make profit. So we have developed that around here. So in our areas, in these Central Illinois area, we have been voted 3 years in a row the best financial planning firm in Central Illinois, based on the public voting for that, none of us. We don't promote it. This just comes out from the normal news channels, and they vote on this. So people have nowhere to, all they know is us. We've owned this market because of that. So it's, are webinars dead? No. Are dinner seminars dead? No. Is television dead? No. If they stand on their own, they're dead upon arrival. If you're going to do just a webinar, it's dead on arrival. If you do dinner seminars only, it's dead on arrival. TV, dead on arrival. Radio. But if you will bring it all together and you will be a marketing company who happens to do financial services, you will win the game hands down each and every time. Your competition is not doing that, period.
And it seems like a lot of advisors they feel like their number one job is to be the best advisor in their area. And when they have that mind shift, that change where they say, no, my number one job is to be the best marketer is in the area. My number two job is to be a really good advisor. It seems like that switches for people.
It does, because there's a lot of great advisors, I'm in a town here of 15,000 people. There are 16 financial advisors on this main street that I'm on. So 16 options out of a town of 15,000 people. I mean, my gosh, you talk about competition. And yet we're a company who absolutely dominates our market in this. We have the same annuities. We have the same mutual funds. We have the same financial planning process. We have the same reporting software. We have the same. Everything's identical. Your tools are the same. You're not going to differentiate yourself against your competition by thinking I've got a better income rider. It's not going to happen. You've got to be the best marketing organization who happens to do financial services. But you have to be great at financial services, but you've got to be the best marketing company first and foremost.
Yeah. If people don't know who you are and that you're the best, it doesn't matter.
That's right.
Would you say that you have a primary source of lead generation then, or is it just all of those things that you just mentioned, billboard, radio, television?
Yeah, it's ever changing because of a couple of things. This is not a shameless plug, but this is like, for example, I've written a book, right? Well, this standing on its own, it gets me nowhere. But my lead generation, so we track our numbers. And I would challenge anyone listening to track your numbers. We know if I spend $1, I know what my ROI is and where it came from, how much time it took for me to get that ROI. I know very clearly if I put out a 10,000 piece dinner seminar invitation and a person responds to that, we don't just mark that down as someone responding to a dinner seminar invitation. We will then drill down and have a quick questionnaire with them and say, you came to that seminar, but prior to you getting that invitation, did you also see the email that we sent to you? Yes, I did. Did you also see that we invited you to go to our website and download the first chapter of my book? Yes, I did. Have you ever seen our billboards out there? Yes, I have. Have you ever seen me on television? Yes. And then we will say, which one of those moved you to take action? They'll say, well, I got the invitation, but I thought I get those all the time. I'm not going to that. But then I turned on the TV and I saw you there. And then I heard you were giving a book away. So I saw that. Eventually it was and they'll tell you, it was this thing that moved me to take action. So if you don't know your numbers well enough, you will have given credit to that dinner seminar for bringing that person in, when quite honestly, it might have been the 5th, 6th, or 7th touch before they actually moved forward with you. That's that whole system I'm talking about. Dinner seminars, Again, on their own, dead on arrival. But we'll do that. We'll couple it with a webinar. We'll couple it with an email campaign. We'll couple it with an offer to a book. We'll couple it with a TV show. We'll couple it with a billboard. And pretty soon they're seeing us everywhere. And we know exactly where they're coming from. So the ROI has gone up exponentially during that time, but you need to know where it's coming from. You need to know how many touches it took to drive that client forward. And then you need to build that system around them to touch those people in that many options, in that many fashions. Otherwise, you're going to have those ROIs that are 1-to-1 or 2-to-1, when quite honestly, you can have a 7-to-1 ROI if you do it right.
Yes, completely agreed. There's going to be people listening that aren't doing 40, 50, 60, 70 million in a year. And so they would want to know, which one of those do I start with? There's billboards, there's radio, there's TV, there's dinner seminars. What do you recommend to somebody that doesn't have the type of marketing budget that you've been able to build up to? What would you recommend what funnels of marketing would you say?
You do the free ones, Justin. You do the free ones. Free is always in the budget. So here's what you do. If you're going to do a dinner seminar, by all means, then do it. Do the dinner seminar. Send out the 5,000, 10,000 piece mailer. But then have somebody in your office, whether it's you or somebody else, picking up the telephone and reaching out to that person saying, thank you so much. We have sent you an invitation. I hope you've gotten it. If you haven't had a chance to open that yet, go ahead and open it, because the event's coming up Tuesday, and we would really want to make a personal invitation to you and bring you in. That costs nothing. Costs you absolutely nothing. It's awkward. It takes some time, but it costs you no money. And just by adding that one element on the outbound phone calls, no one's doing outbound phone calls anymore, right? Nobody wants to answer a phone, but they'll listen to your voicemail if you leave it to them. You'll say, hey, listen, I'm not some out-of-state company. We're right here in Illinois. I sent you an invitation. I would sure love to have you there. Let us know if you can come. Click. And that's it. That costs nothing. You will then layer on top of that, as that seminar number grows, your profit grows. You can layer on the third thing and the fourth thing and the fifth thing and sixth thing. It's not something you'll do in 6 months, but you can start the next thing right now. And that could be an outbound phone call. It could be this, a handwritten note. Nobody does them anymore. Pick up a stack of stationery and say, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, thank you for responding to our upcoming seminar. It's going to be an honor to have you there. And by the way, we would still have a few seats left. If you want to bring some guests, bring them with you. They'll bring a neighbor. And what does that cost you? Nothing. And you'll fill that room on a handwritten note that cost you 50 cents or 75 cents to mail it, whatever a stamp is. Your budget can be extremely small. Phone call followed up by a handwritten note. Then they get to that event that night. You personally welcome them, and then you personally send them another handwritten note after the event. Thank you so much. You have no idea, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but you being there meant to me that night. I am so looking forward to having you in the office on your date of X. Your stick rate goes up, your ROI goes up, your budget went up nothing. You spent no extra money, maybe $1 or $2 for a stamp, but you basically spent nothing. Now you've got 3 or 4 layers of what I'm talking about, and you didn't spend an extra dime. Very, very powerful stuff.
So what I hear you saying, Phil, is that still choose a primary source of lead generation that you're going to have to put a budget into, but you don't have to spend all the extra money to get on the radio or be on TV or to be on a billboard. That comes eventually, but you can still do the exact same thing with the free touches, a phone call, a letter, an email, and a BombBomb video.
You can. BombBomb videos are huge. We use them every day of the week. People love that. There's a little bit of a subscription fee to that, but it's very, very small. If you try to jump into the TV market, the radio market, the billboard market, you'll bankrupt yourself in 6 months. It'll be over with.
Yeah.
But if you'll do a BombBomb video, a handwritten note, an outgoing phone call, by all means, whatever you do something. Just do something more. BombBomb, you brought that up. This is not. I'm not. My disclaimer is I get nothing out of this by promoting BombBomb, but it changed my business.
Yeah.
Absolutely changed my business completely, because it's like this. It's face to face. It's, hey, Justin, this is Phil here. Thanks so much for being at the event last night. I hope it was educational for you. By the way, I remember where you were sitting at table number 6 over there. You guys were laughing a lot. Sound like you had a great time. Can't wait to see you at our next meeting. Have a good day. Thanks. And it goes off an email. They open it, and they respond back. Wow, that was really nice. Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you next Tuesday. And it's different. It's different than what they're seeing anywhere else.
You're describing relational, not transactional, and I love that.
100%, yes.
So you do lead generation. You're on the radio. So there's some of that's branding, some of that's lead generation and stuff. And then What do you do for lead nurturing? Because I talk to a lot of advisors and they've been in the business 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and they're still relying on lead generation to get in front of their next prospect. And there's such a huge market and there's such a huge opportunity to existing databases where you can nurture those leads. So how do you nurture your leads?
First thing I would challenge anyone, any advisor today listening to this particular podcast is this: list building. List building. Get your list built. Where am I getting my list from? Anybody that's ever been in this office before, for any reason, is on a list. Anybody that we've ever mailed to in the past, they're on a list. When I do a mail, 10,000 piece mailer, I get that list from the mail house. That's my list. I bought that. I want that list. And now we have built tens of thousands of people that I could push a button today and have tens of thousands of emails go out tomorrow in a bomb video. A world event just happened, and we'll send out a bomb video to say, hey, listen, I know this is going on in the world. Maybe it's time we revisit your plan. I know you've chosen not to do business with us up to this point, but you've met us. You know we're real people. You've been to one of our dinner seminars. This is another invitation to sit down in front of us, and we have those lists built. Because today, if I never ever sent out another invitation to a cold prospect list, I would probably say, I got to be careful on this. I don't know this to be factual evidence, but I would say we have enough evidence now on the lists that we have, the way that we nurture them through a book offering. Hey, Phil just wrote a book. I know you met us 2.5 years ago. Things have changed in our world. Why don't you get a copy of Phil's book? There it is. Why don't you get a copy of Phil's book? Why don't you click on this link today and take you back to a webinar Phil just did? Why don't you do this? Why don't you come to the next event? Why don't you do this? And that's from the lists that we have built over the years of now amassing these nurturing lists. And we'll use companies like Snappy Kraken. Snappy Kraken's awesome. They'll send out pre-populated content just daily for us if we want them to. We'll offer them books. We'll offer them the next event. So we'll go back to our list and we'll say, hey, maybe you've seen our stuff coming in the mail, but there's a dinner seminar coming up Tuesday night. Our team calls that boosting the seminar, where we'll send out a normal 10,000 piece mailer, but then we'll boost the seminar and invite people who have been before who think, well, I've already been to one of theirs. I don't need to go back. And we'll tell them in a video on that boost that, hey, I know you've been to one last year, but this is different. Gosh, it's all different. Interest rates are higher now and inflation's a lot higher. New information, you need to come back. And pretty soon our 30-person seminar goes to 60, 70, 80 people per seminar on a 10,000 piece mailer. So it looks like our rate of return on that is off the charts, and it's not. We're still getting the low rate of return or the low response rate on our mailers like everybody else is getting, but we're filling rooms because we've populated those lists over the years, again, becoming the best marketing company in your industry who happens to do financial services.
So as you're saying this, I'm wondering, in your opinion, is there any such thing as a bad mailer? Like if you don't have a good turnout to your mailer, do you blame the mailer or do you just boost it and still get people to show up?
Used to blame the mailer. Used to blame the mail house. Used to blame the picture that was on the mailer. I used to blame the content that it had nothing to do with it. There's nothing to do with it. As long as I can get that list of people that I just bought to mail that 10,000 piece mailer, I'm going to win the game over everybody in this marketplace, because I know how to touch those people multiple times over the next decade if I need to before they take action. Because in their life, that person that came 2 years ago, the timing wasn't right, and now all of a sudden things have changed, and now timing's right for them. And I want to be first and foremost in their space when their time and their life changes. It has nothing to do with. And so many folks will do that, and I'm guilty of that too, Justin. I will sit down and I will look at a mailer and go, boy, if we could only tweak that one word in paragraph number 3. No one's reading that thing.
Yes.
No one's reading that thing. They're reading the highlights and saying there's a free steak dinner Tuesday night. Let's go. It's not about the design of that thing.
What would you say has been like? What's a struggle that you've had in the financial services industry? What would be a struggle that you say that you've had as a financial advisor that other financial advisors can be like, oh yeah, I feel that.
So I am now, as I mentioned to you, I'm 25 years into this thing. We're dominating markets that we're in. I thought I had to do all of the things we're doing today in the next month, back when I wasn't doing them. And it was overwhelming. I'll never get to those numbers that I always dreamed of getting to, because I got to do TV. I got to do radio. I got to do billboards. I got to do dinner seminars. I got to do snappy cracking. I got to do bomb videos. I got to do handwritten notes. I got to do. And I can't get it all done. Instead, I wish somebody would have grabbed me back then and said, what are you doing for marketing? And I would have said this: I'm doing dinner seminars. If that person would have challenged me to say, okay, go ahead and do dinner seminars, all I want you to add is a handwritten note after the fact. Can you do that? Yep, I can do that. And let's just do that for the next 3 to 6 months and watch our numbers go up. And then after that, we're going to do dinner seminars. We're going to add a handwritten note, and then we're going to do an outbound phone call. Can you do that? We're not going to do that for a few months. Can you do that? Sure, I can do that. And then we're going to add slowly and add slowly and add slowly to now I've got a machine. Now this thing is just churning and burning. It's a giant ATM machine. I put out 10,000 piece mailer. I own that list. And for the next decade, those people are now coming in one at a time, one at a time, one at a time for an investment I made years and years ago. If somebody would have said to me, though, you've got to add all this in your life, I would have said, I don't have the money. I don't have the knowledge. I don't have the time. I don't know what I'm going to do. And you sink under that and you fall and you wind up looking at it, looking at your numbers going, how am I going to drive more people through this front door? Now I don't have a problem driving people through my front door. Now what I have is a capacity problem. Now is how do I get everyone through here? Because the capacity is so high. The 6 or the 5 advisors plus the staff behind us, we have a whole bunch of people, but the staff. Now, how do I get all of those people through without having to hire more people? That's a whole different set of problems than versus looking for your next sale.
And hiring people who are driven by the same why.
Same why. Exactly right. That's a critical thing. Yeah, it is. It is, but it's possible. It is possible.
And you have how many locations now? 3?
3 locations, yes.
You kind of already answered this, but I want to end every podcast with this question. And like I said, you kind of already answered it, but what's one thing that you would tell your younger self when you were just starting off in the business?
I think I pushed this button over and over and over already, but I would tell myself that your why is more important than your how, because that'll keep you going in the hard times. And there will be hard times. And I think number 2, I would tell myself, I'm not a financial services company. I'm a marketing company that happens to do financial services. And I had those backwards for years. I wanted to be the best advisor, and I still want to be the best advisor. I want my team to be the best at what they do, and I still want that. But I think that everyone needs to realize that a lot of problems in this industry can be solved by how many first appointments you have walking through your front door. A lot of problems can be solved by that. So if you become a great marketing company, you figure out your why to give you the energy to do it, the sky is the limit. $10 million a year, if that's your dream, that's in the bag. If $50 million a year is your dream, that's in the bag. If $75 million a year of new assets is your dream, I'm telling you, I'm living proof to tell you it's in the bag if that's what you want.
That's awesome. Any last words you want to leave with the listener, with the advisor? Yeah,
I would say if you're an advisor today, I would say this. This is where my mind and my heart are today, that the next decade is going to be the greatest decade ever to be in our industry for a lot of reasons. Number 1 is the volatility of the world. People are looking for somebody to step in and help them and hold their hand. Number 2, you've got this aging American population who need answers. There's the tax laws that are changing, the political environment that's changing, inflation and interest rate environments that are changing. People need you now more than they've ever needed you. The first 15 years or first 20 years of your career were good. These next 10 will probably be the greatest ever for people who have the marketing figured out and have the internal systems figured out. I'm going to see, Justin, we're probably going to see numbers coming out of firms that are going to be absolutely staggering. When I got in the industry, if a person was doing $10 million a year, they were a big, big hitter. And today I would say that if you're 100 million, 150 million, $200 million a year is numbers, or those are numbers that are going to be commonplace for guys and gals who have this figured out.
Well, Phil, thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Thank you so much.
We'll talk to you later. Thanks.